All right, Brian, we're going to take a look at your stroke and see what we can come up with. So if we look at kind of this video of you coming straight at the camera. Now, it's a little tough, kind of we're off kilter here. You know, this looks pretty good. I mean, your arms definitely look like you're in line here, kind of going really straight forward. So all of this is going there. Your hands are entering in shoulder width apart. Fingertips point down pretty quickly. The only thing that I would say is that right there, so if we look at, here's kind of midline, you could probably be a little bit closer to the midline on the pole. So that elbow is going to be bent a little bit more right there. So I just think about when you're pulling and you get into that, get the catch, would be to think about bringing your hand kind of as you pull closer to your belly button. So you're going to bring that hand up a little bit. That'll just give you a little bit more leverage on the water, especially for a longer distance race. And let's back it up so you can see the left. Yeah, so there, especially on the breath on the right side, you can see it's a little bit of a different issue, but you can see kind of you're kind of wide out here. Now, I'm going to wait till we get to the underwater to really kind of say for certain. But I think you could probably have a little bit more bend on the elbow as you're pulling through the water. It'll just give you a little bit more leverage. So the other thing that you can see here, especially as you swim away, so you can see that, you know, you're getting a good amount of rotation on this right hip. Okay, some of it's coming from the breath, because you're breathing to that side. You're getting some rotation, but you can see that when you rotate through on the left side, that left hip is fairly flat. Okay, so then you can see the difference between kind of the angle here on the water, and then back it up, and then the angle here on the water. You know, typically what we want to think about is that arm is about 30 degrees, that shoulder is about 30 degrees off the plane of the water. You know, you're getting a lot of right here. You know, you're really rotating your body there, so this is probably a little bit too much of an angle off the water. And then I'd say that this side is probably not enough. But some of that's to do with that hip not rotating. But we'll see how it plays out with some of the underwater videos that are coming up. Okay, so here we go through, and we can see this. So on this right side, you know, it's pretty good. You can see just a little bit of so there's the elbow, and there's extended out. I'd really prefer to see more of it just kind of really, really straight line like that, so that we don't have that slight dip in the elbow right there before you set that catch. Because what you'll see is, so we're pressing down, you're starting to get a good position right there, but you really don't start pulling yourself forward till there. That's where you really catch on the water. So from there to about there, all you're doing is pressing down on the water. So that's going to press that head and chest up, which will press the hips and back end down, okay? And then on top of that, you're not going to be pulling yourself forward. The other thing is, you're looking kind of right about there. So it looks like kind of waterline's almost right at your hairline. I prefer to see kind of you looking right about there, so not straight down, but just a little bit forward, so your chin's just slightly up. And then on this left side, you can see kind of a much bigger dip in that elbow. And then we really don't start pulling ourselves forward, so you're dumping a lot of pressure right until about, it's not till about there, and it doesn't look like you're getting a ton of purchase on the water, just because most of your attention right now, because you're breathing, is right there instead of right there. So the one thing that you always want to do is take that, attention and awareness, especially on the breath, because, we all want to breathe and we want to make sure that we don't suck in water when we go to turn to breathe. So all of that attention, focus, and awareness of our brain is right there on our face. And so the opposite arm that's pulling tends to get short shrift, and it tends to do what, usually most of the time you slip a lot of water, just because you're just not going to be getting that much focus, or that much purchase on the water, because all your focus and attention is elsewhere. And it's totally understandable, but you just got to trust in yourself that, look, I made this movement a bunch of times, and the breath is going to happen. Brain, body, nervous system, it is almost a subconscious movement at that point, because of how many laps you've done in the pool, how much training you've done, and you just got to believe that it's gonna happen, and it will. The other thing is that you look like you might be breathing. It's a little bit late, because you can see kind of right here. By here, your head should already be back down, kind of, and then looking right about there. And right here, you're kind of looking effectively at the wall still at that point. So the timing on the breathing is just a little bit late. Hip position looking pretty good. I mean, there's a little bit of a gap right there between kind of the top of the waterline, top of your butt. It's not that much. It's maybe, it looks like, I don't know, call it 2 inches. But that 2 inches for you, 2-3 inches for you, is probably conservatively maybe 5 to 7 seconds, 100, that you could pick up pretty easily. And a lot of that's going to be related to what we just discussed, which is that press down right here. That's going to press this up. This is going to come down. But you can see right there, so there's the big rotation there from the breath. And then you can see how that left hip really doesn't move at all. So, you want to think of it as kind of the equivalent of throwing a ball. And where, if you're throwing a ball with a lot of force, a lot of momentum, you're getting the most out of that throw. The hips and shoulders go together. It's all coordinated from the core, so they rotate together. If your hips aren't moving, in this case your hip isn't moving, you're giving up some power in the water, and you're effectively limiting the throw to just your shoulder. And effectively all the swim stroke is just you throwing the ball straight down at the ground. So you can see it's on that right side. You're really not getting as much as you could out of it. So here we go here's the front angle of it. So you can tell kind of really deep catch right here. Right like that. Typically when you see something like that from the front, unless they're a 50 freestyler, where you've got just effectively a straight arm pole, where you're just trying to torque the hell out of the water. That is typically indicative of where you're dropping your elbow a little bit. When you see from this angle where it looks like it's a straight arm, because effectively what you should have is something more like that. And if you've ever heard swim coaches talk about kind of that power diamond, so right in there is that, if you're swimming butterfly, so it's the diamond right in there. And effectively what we want with the freestyle is just kind of that half of diamond. So we've got that really great, those two great levers, just like, when you're throwing a ball. You get that bend in your elbow, and it adds as another lever to really get as much effort and force and leverage that you can, in this case on the water. If we want to kind of nitpick a little bit, this looks pretty good. Kind of your body position right there, you're relatively flat on the water. You can see kind of like right there, the foot's dropping down a little bit. Dropping down there a little bit. So that's, all drag that you're pulling against. And then you can see right here, and this is pretty much just a stabilization movement. You can see from your foot to your foot kind of how wide you are in the water. And that's all causing extra drag that you wouldn't necessarily have to have in the water. So you want to make sure that you try to keep those a little bit tighter together. And really what that is just you don't have as much stability in the water as you need. Your body feels that. So it's that little extra wide kick that's trying to stabilize the body in the water. Some of that's coming from the breath on the right side. Some of it's coming from probably not enough core engagement in the water and not enough engagement up and down that chain as you move through the water. And you can see, so there's the movement, there's that left hip, and you can see that right hip really just doesn't rotate much. And then here we can really see kind of, there's that drop in that elbow again from this different angle. And you can see right there, there's where your hips drop. So you surge a little bit, you come up, and then they drop again. You can see when you breathe, that's where we get the big gap between the feet. And you got a pretty good finish on the water right there, kind of coming out of the hip. You might want to play around with that a little bit in practice. That'll help kind of with core engagement a little bit, just that little bit extra finish. And I'm going to do a write-up on this that I'll send to you separately, and you'll be able to see some kind of drill work that you'll be able to do, some kind of equipment that you can incorporate into your practice that will help out with core engagement and just kind of some of the strength and conditioning specific to the water that you're going to need to work on some of these issues. But yeah, I mean, that would be the initial stuff that I would work on, would be, thinking about more core engagement, thinking about that head position where we want to look a little bit more straight down in the water, chin up just a little bit, and then trying to get that hand as you pull through, kind of move it closer to the midline and then up towards your belly button as you pull. If you really want to kind of tweak things a little bit and get a little bit more core engagement, or a little bit more lat engagement on the pull, you can play around with trying to get more pressure on those outside two fingers, so the pinky and the ring finger. That'll help with lat engagement. All right, so that was that was kind of the initial analysis here, and I will send you the write-up here shortly.